Michael, we can't hear you.
Is this another pantomime? Is that it?
Yes, there you
Are
go.
we better
Yeah,
now? You now
yes.
listen. What you really didn't realize was that this was a great test in telepathy or lip reading, whichever whichever you have thought to be the best method of testing your inner divine powers. Anyway, I found my position, and suddenly everything went right back up to the top, and that was my problem. Okay, but here we are for an evening session, and it is the 58th of these Science of Triangles programs. But first, I think what I'd like to do is just say hi and to Anna. That'd be number one. And yeah, no sound. Hear nothing. Yeah, I say, what a great test it was, right? How many passed that test? Okay, I certainly didn't. Annette, hi. And Antoinette, and Brennan, and Catherine, and Dennis. Okay. Ishtar, Jan, Joan, Johi, Karen, Carrie, Leslie, Lona, Mariana, and Michael, and Natney, and Nicole, and Yenke, Winnie, Zenaidi, and Veronica. And over here, you see how important it is. I might have just continued thinking everything was great, but BL, posing as the voice of God, called me out of my folly, and now I'm on the straight and narrow path once again of audibility. Okay. Now let's see where we are here. Yeah. All right. Well, let's, just pause for a moment and think of the heavens and all of the entities that are ultimately emanations of the one great universal logos. Ultimately, they are that. And every descending entity becoming in a way smaller and smaller, but still on those high levels extremely huge, has its own emanations, and on we go. You can understand that we little human beings, we are emanations of what we call the monad. But the monad itself is, in the way that we think of it, is an emanation. And there's nothing in all of cosmos that does not derive from a unitary being that perceives itself in lesser and lesser extensions, we might say, even though extension is not a reality. It's a kind of a fact of consciousness on the illusory level. And triangles are showing up right at the very beginning of it all. There has to be the perceiver, the perceived, and the perceiving. And let's just say, for practical purposes, since this is all about relativity, that the beginning of it all is the going forth of any particular universal logos into diversity, into diversification. So we're all the product of one identity in this universe, and we are all related, not only related, but we are, in the last analysis, identical, and this will be proven to us as we continue to reascend the stream along which we descended. Mortality is only a change of scene, and consciousness cannot be exterminated at any point, except if it's overtaken by such an intense state of being that it's not necessary. So we try to find these relations in the great science of relations, and you see even right here this picture of the cosmic physical plane, and you see how many triangular relationships there are, and all of them are significant in the constitution of the human being, the monad, the triad, what we call the soul, with its different triangles of petals, and we have two permanent atoms and a mental unit right over here in what we call the atomic triangle, and we have the triangular shape of the head, heart, and throat center on different subplanes, triangles everywhere, and if not to complicate the issue, triangles in rotation as well, so that different points of the triangle come to the apex, the top, at different times in the development of whatever entity it happens to be. And you as a soul, well, you are called the triangle. And as a monad as well, will, wisdom, and active intelligence. So we're not going to escape this idea of the ever-present triangles. And what we're doing is I don't know how many of you are into esoteric astrology yet. I have a lot to recommend there. And if you go to Makara, makara.us, www.makara.us, you'll find the whole esoteric astrology book presented as a video book with commentary. So, there's a lot to learn, and every day a little something should be learned on our way to omniscience. That means knowing everything. Well, knowing everything within the planetary sphere, at least. And that's just a drop in the bucket compared to eventual universal omniscience. So you really, as a being, you don't really have any limitations. Now, you have temporary limitations, of course, and this is a temporary universe, and it's a limited universe because it is still subject to appearance and disappearance according to the Great Breath. But other than those passing limitations, which we have to deal with all the time, the real you is not a limited being. And to somehow hold that in consciousness without succumbing to inflation, where you think you're a big deal, when if actually we're just a little speck, that's sometimes hard to do. People get ego inflation, that sense of I-ness, which is overweening, and it leads to overweening pride, they get that from a lot less than we're talking about. But I think things are put in perspective, and as we begin to see in this great science of relations, the interplay between the various planetary and stellar and constellational and galactic sources, we're given a sense of true proportion and the proper sense of humility, which reveals to us what we can do, what we can't do in our limited state, what we should do and should not do, and it helps guide us on the path of return. And of course, we need that guidance, otherwise it's just so possible to go astray with all kinds of glamorous and illusory notions. So our little task here, is to come into right relationship with the various triangular sources. Even when DK was arranging people in groups, he always had a central triangle in any group of 9. I still have to find that, or BL, if you know where that diagram is, with a triangle in the middle and then 3 other triangles at each vertex, it would be useful to see. As for myself, I'd have to go on some kind of hunt hidden in the secret chambers of this computer, still forgotten and unknown. Okay.
Michael,
yes.
do you think it was in esoteric astrology, in the diagrams in esoteric astrology?
I don't.
Okay, I'll look for it. I'll look for it.
But, it's not urgent, but it's something that would give everybody an idea of how central to the way DK organized his groups was the central triangle. And it's always, the 1, 2, 3 of things. It's always the rays of attribute, or rather aspect, the rays of aspect 1, 2, and 3. Okay. All right, friends. So now let's see what we have. And hopefully we won't go on some kind of retrogressive journey back to the very beginning. And this is page 178 in the bottom, in case we get lost again here. So anyway, we've been looking at correlations and the 7 crises and how they can be related to the vital or etheric body. And I said Cancer to the base of the spine, Virgo producing form to the sacral center, but also to the heart center and to the mental levels, and maybe, some of those chakras on the mental level. I mean, what you do see here is that the mental plane has its chakras, and that in higher replica of the etheric chakras, the astral plane has its chakras too. And the Ajna center seems to be left out, but it's on one of these levels of the highest subplane, because it's a mental structure, and it's a head structure. So it's left, it's not given, but that's where you're going to find it, I believe. And I'm not sure exactly on what subplane. Who knows, maybe the 4th subplanes. See, every one of these 7 in DK's diagram here is a subplane, but every one of the 7 has 7 sub levels, and your adjacent center is going to be found on one of those. And up here on the mental plane, the higher mental plane, it's the petals of the egoic lotus, which take the place of the ordinary chakras. And eventually, what I suspect will happen, he doesn't really get into it too much, but when the solar angel returns to the heart of the sun, or whatever part of the solar structure it returns to, sometimes the central spiritual sun is mentioned, then man will have his own chakras on each of these higher levels. Basically, the solar angel coming in as sort of the co-participant in the higher consciousness of the human being, acted as a bridge, because for whatever reason, some kind of retardation and probably the moon chain disaster, the chakras on the higher levels of the mental plane were never properly formed. Maybe there just wasn't time for it, developed, or they weren't properly developed before the solar logos had to call the whole thing quits, because it was just running in the wrong direction. So he by fiat, he ended the evolution on the moon chain of our Earth scheme. You got a scheme is a big thing, and a chain is 1/7 of it. And he ended that. And then the solar angels came in to help the lives, especially like man, to bridge the areas where development was not complete. And then when the solar angel returns, man has a more complete development. As a matter of fact, I know I'm wandering off here a little bit, but it may be of interest to think that this is an incomplete chart. I mean, if you tried to do a complete chart, I don't know what you'd do, maybe have to stand in the middle of the room and surround yourself with projections on some kind of circular wall. But every one of these higher 4 planes, on the Buddhic level, on the Atmic level, even on the monadic level and above, I suspect, has its own chakras, which are not here depicted or portrayed. Now, the hint to that is the statement that 35 vortices of fire make a master. Now, just suppose that this egoic body, this egoic lotus, disappears, and you've got 3 major chakras there, and maybe we throw in the Ajna center and forget the spleen and other lower chakras. 7, 7, 7, 21. 7 more on the Buddhic plane, 28. 7 more on the Atmic plane, 35. And we all know that the Atmic plane, being the 5th plane, is, in a way, the plane on which a human being is made a master. And then I would just continue it to 42 vortices of fire make a Chohan of the 6th degree. See, a Chohan, is a 6-degree initiate. And I would carry it further and say 49 vortices of fire make the Chohan of the 7th degree, which is just about as high as you can evolve and confine yourself only to the cosmic physical plane. By the time you are a Buddha of the 8th degree, that figure 8, part of the loop is going up there onto the cosmic astral plane and then down to the cosmic physical and up. So there looks like there's a ability to come and go on the cosmic astral plane, and then by the time you reach what for us is, he doesn't say anything further about the initiatory path. The 9th initiation, he says, we refuse to have anything to do anymore with the cosmic physical plane. All this right here in front of you, unless, of course, we come back in a sacrificial mode, having been trained elsewhere in order to give something as a kind of an avataric being to the up-and-coming lives that are still struggling on the cosmic physical plane. So, you know, this is all a story of our future, and we will be evolving by means of the triangles in which we are participating, probably according to our various ray structures. So it's, you know, incredibly intricate thing, and yet the principles are fairly simple. My old teacher used to say, there are 10,000 things I don't know, but of the fundamentals, I am sure. I just, you know, feel the reverberation, even as I reconstruct those statements, which occurred a few times in my 7-year training period. And what he meant by the fundamentals, the foundation of identification, there being one being and all beings identified as that one being. The rest is diversity and difference and the result of limited perception. But there is the big perception too, and that's what we're all struggling to achieve in this life, or, you know, in lives to come. And I would say, you know, probably in lives to come. We're getting set up now. We're practicing. We're thinking. We're rehearsing. Tuya is fond of saying, all of this is just a rehearsal. I think, you know, she's very correct there. But we will pass through these stages. So anyway, Scorpio, you know, it can work out in the solar plexus where the big battle takes place. For most people, the Kurukshetra, you've heard of it. It's a plain, actually, south of the city of Delhi, whatever that was 4 million years ago. And that's where the great battle literally took place. And when you read about it, you get the sense that the Atlanteans of the time were so advanced in their weaponry that even atomic weapons were being used. There's something about the way the glass and the stone formation have been subjected to incredible heat on that plane and possibly derived from that long ago event, which in geological time is not very long, but in terms of human time, it's a long time, 4 million years ago, roughly. So Scorpio has a lot to do with our solar plexus center. I did float the idea to this group that sometimes when I look at the chakras of the human being, I think that either 3 planets rule one of the chakras, three, and so forth, or that 3 signs are involved with each chakra. I can't prove that, but certainly when I look at the base of the spine, there's a very strong Mars, a very strong Mercury, and a very strong Earth. And Earth is actually, in our solar system, the ruler of the base of the spine. So sometimes when you look at what's happening on our planet and you see things heating up, and you realize that the base of the spine center in an individual can be used for the 4th initiation in a powerful way, and the fact that on our planetary chain here, we are going through a kind of 4th initiation. This is our chain. And the planetary logos is focused here on this Earth chain through which it is taking a 4th initiation. You can understand that the increase of heat that is being experienced is not only man's mismanagement of certain fuels and chemicals and things of that nature. Yes, we're making matters worse, but things are heating up now for a planetary initiation of the 4th degree, not the cosmic 4th, no, which would involve this whole scheme with all of its 7 exoteric globes, or rather chains, because there might be 3 more hidden somewhere here, Wherever there are 7, always look for 10, is one of my mottos. But this is an internal event, and especially since we on Earth, and by Earth I mean all of this, are the base of the spine center in our solar system. So, one of the ways of figuring out triangles, when you look at the solar system, is to look at triangles in your own etheric system. And I recommended you to page 169 and 170 of A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, where it talked about triangles through which we live at different stages of our development. And then you can say, okay, the solar system is going through its own development, and maybe there's a parallel. Man has certain triangles that are emerging at different times, and so does the solar logos, and so does any planetary logos. Only in this case, it's the chains themselves, which are the chakras. So you can understand maybe how much esotericism is hidden in these diagrams, about which Master DK doesn't say too much. And, maybe wisely so, he leaves it to us to figure out. But when you look at the Mercury chain and you compare it to the Venus chain, there are real structural differences. And then, you can compare it to the Earth chain, which is very square, real structural differences. Pentagon And here is an odd shape with a couple of triangles superimposed and globes of different size. There's a load of information hidden in these diagrams, and for the students of the future schools, these will be fair game to study. Plus, Master DK will give us more that will set up our curriculum for us in these new esoteric schools through which the hierarchy can work. Pretty much until the great Lord, the Christ, reappears in person, these schools are going to be very preparatory to the preparatory schools. And we don't expect the advanced schools to be emerging rapidly, but they are going to be the equivalent of any good university and much more. So get yourself ready for that time. There will be a drastic entrance examination. Your karma will be looked up to see whether this is allowed for you at this time. And then in you go, either for a short time or a long time, depending upon your attainment. So I feel quite sure that at least some of the people here who frequent these webinars will be part and parcel in their earlier days. It has to be before the age of 42, interestingly. They will be taking part in the training offered by the new esoteric schools, and all I can say is I'll see you there. We're all rehearsing now, and we're doing our best to get ready. Okay, so anyway, I said Gemini, the heart center. Yes, because of the crucifixion, and Capricorn, the Ajna center, and Leo, of course, the crown, the dome. There are different ways of assigning the different signs of the zodiac to the different chakras. And, you just have to know why it might be so. Why are these assignments existing as they are? And he goes on to say, page 476, if I can't find anything, if I get lost again, either 179 or 180 or 476, the advanced students, and I don't know that any of us should really consider ourselves advanced students, but we're on our way. Advanced students will later find that there is a close cyclic interrelation between, well, what are we talking about? The different stages of consciousness which emerge cyclically. They don't all happen at once. All chakras do not unfold at once, and the chakras below the diaphragm are the first to unfold, and the higher chakras, although they have to be present, much later to unfold. And just the way, you don't take all initiations at the same time. There are some schools of thought that seem to offer the idea that you can take the first 5 initiations synthetically and simultaneously, but at least that particular assertion contradicts what Master DK says about the initiate already being initiate before initiation. In other words, what initiation is the confirmation of what you have achieved. I'm not a potter, but I know some people that work in clay and all that. And until a pot is fired, it's very vulnerable. It can just kind of fall apart and subject it to water, and it just disintegrates. But once the pot is fired, it has a lot of resistance and a lot of durability. And you can think about initiation in that way. Yes, you have achieved something, and then the initiator confirms it with what is called the accolade of fire. And you are established on a certain plateau of achievement from which, after that, it is difficult to descend and to mess up and ruin, you know. There are people that do that, of course, but not the great majority by any means. So, excuse me, Master DK says there's a close cyclic interrelation between the 7 planes of divine expression, and by that, I would simply assume that this is what he means. These 7 planes of divine expression. Sometimes the word divine is used just for these 2 planes, and spiritual for these 2.5 planes. But I think he means the whole thing in this particular context. So there's a close interrelation between the 7 planes of divine expression, the 7 states of resultant consciousness. He's told us a little bit about the kind of consciousness you can achieve, the 7 crises leading to the expansion of consciousness, because, you know, DK says, well, if you're not having a crisis, why aren't you having a crisis? Because, you know, it's the way to grow. So following every crisis, yes, there could be a retrogressive movement if you don't sort of pass the test and you have to try it again, but so many people pass the test and they go on to a greater state of crisis. So he's connecting all of these 1, 2, and 3 points. And then what else have we got here? We have the 7 initiations climaxing these expansions of consciousness, and I've tried to give us something on that. So I'm going to go back here just for a little bit and see. So there's a relation between the 7 planes of divine expression, interrelation. So let's just say people like you and me, we're doing an awful lot of work right here. This is it. See that dotted line? See this line here from the mental unit to sort of the center of the flower? And actually, what you could see, if we really wanted to find it here, would be a blow-up of that. And here it is. This is where we're working. We're trying to find our place on the transitional plane of the mental plane, the 4th, which is called the plane of discrimination. And it allows us to discriminate between what is of the soul in the higher mind, or the higher power, whatever you want to call it, and what is of the personality, the lower mind. So to make this bridge, even this very first bridge, what you'll notice in the material of the Arcane School is that basically they're helping you make that bridge first. And that's how Alice Bailey set up her school. And then later for the advanced work, then this bridge is the one that is built with the words of power. So this kind of building is occurring more towards the first initiation and following, and this kind of building occurs more towards the second initiation and following. There's also another way to get to the top here, and that's to work from the center of the higher mind in a thoughtful, I think, philosophical way, you can also reach the monastic permanent atom that way. But the preferred way that DK gives us is the building of the Antakarana. We call it, the inner organ. It's called that. The organ of light, and we build that out of Mercury and a lot of Gemini, and gradually we become more adept at that. And about 100 pages are given to describing how this should be done in the book, The Rays and the Initiations. Okay, so a little more. So now also the interrelation between the 7 planes and the 7 states of resultant consciousness. And you may be familiar with the idea that Master DK has told us that every plane is really a state of consciousness. So if we were to look at the planes from below, we would find them in this order on the cosmic physical plane. Aquarius would rule the etheric physical plane, the hierarchical ruler. Then, in a change of order from what we might think, Sagittarius would rule the astral plane, and that fits well because of all the aspiration that's going on in that sign. Capricorn would rule both parts of the mental plane. And, Capricorn is an amazing sign, and the very, very high people and those who are very, in a way, hard and selfish and wicked, temporarily wicked, are found in that sign as well. I've looked up some of the real terrors on the battlefield and conquerors and so forth, and there's surely a lot of Capricorn there, and you don't want to meet it when it comes in its very negative form. But that rules the lower mind and the higher mind in different ways. The Saturn part is ruling the lower mind quite strongly, and the Venus part of Capricorn, Venus, is the hierarchical ruler of Capricorn. That is ruling the higher 3 subplanes of the higher mind. Then comes Scorpio. Now that's our home. And even though, I wonder if I can just scoot over here. Yeah, I can. Notice Aquarius, Sagittarius, Capricorn. This is the map you want. Scorpio takes us to the Buddhic plane, and the power that we human beings use is Mantrika Shakti, or the word made flesh. We use Mercury. We use speech, and we see that Mercury is the planet there accordingly. Now, it may be true that our monads are, in a way, sent forth from the monadic plane, but the work done, and where we really have to prove ourselves, is here on the Buddhic plane. So we are the initiates, and we are lords of sacrifice, and so are the solar angels in different ways. And the human hierarchy of monads is found right here on the Buddhic plane, developing on the Buddhic plane. There are 3 planets which are particularly Buddhic in their nature, which means they kind of put things together into a unity, okay? And those planets are Mercury, Jupiter, the planet of inclusiveness, and Neptune, the planet of boundarylessness. So the yellow and the blue, Neptune is the bluest. There's a lot of blue associated with Jupiter, and Mercury is the yellow part. So those particular colors are connected with the Buddhic plane. Then we ascend further. Libra is the ruler of the atmic plane, whereon the master takes his mastership, and he knows something. He's a Jnana yogi. He's a yogi of knowledge. And so it's the power of knowledge, Jnana Shakti, the force of mind, and the fleur-de-lis, the French symbol there, is the symbol of the kind of beings that you find on that level. Now, we also learn that each one of our vehicles, if I can go back over here for just a minute, that each one of our vehicles in the spiritual triad eventually is organized and built around or from a permanent atom. So one day, and it's probably not yet, we're going to have a fully organized mental vehicle, including the higher and lower mind, a fully organized intuitive vehicle built around the Buddhic permanent atom, and a fully organized atmic vehicle, which is probably built more or less around the time of the fifth initiation, around the way to the fifth initiation. So DK doesn't talk very much about those vehicles, but he talks enough. I mean, you've got an astral body, you've got an etheric body down here, you've got a mental body, and there are higher correspondences to these in a triangular formation. So Libra is very, very important when it comes to the spiritual will. The spiritual will is coming from the atmic plane as it receives it from the still higher planes. And then we go up to the monadic plane, and we discover that, interestingly enough, it's built under the influence of Virgo. And Jupiter gives that big expansion, and its color is blue. And the power is Kriya Shakti. We've heard about that ability to generate a lower vehicle through the power of the imagination. So a lot of the master's ability to regenerate a vehicle that he can operate in the lower worlds is coming from this Kriya Shakti area. So that's the monadic plane and Jupiter. There's a lot of intricacy here. It's very interesting. There's Pisces and there's Virgo, and the hierarchical ruler of Virgo is Jupiter. And then finally, we get into the highest beings. They're way beyond man, and they are part of the highest plane here, right up here. And they are called the divine flames. And the planet is the sun. Well, the sun is not really a planet. So in a way, Vulcan may be involved there, and a little bit of Uranus that is veiled by the sun in Leo. And the word para always means beyond, as far as you can go. So the supreme energy of the cosmic physical plane is found here, para Shakti. And this is our goal. This is our goal in our spiritual development And when the monadic vehicle is destroyed, just the way down here the causal vehicle will be destroyed, we're ready to go into the sea of fire. Now that's and to see what Shambhala really is. That's a lot more interesting destiny, I think, than the kind of childish destinies that are offered to people as the future of their consciousness, or we might say the future of their soul. This lies ahead of us. And here, triangular relationships are found everywhere. Right here, the triple flowers of the atmic plane and the triple monads are there. And even we find the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost sub-logoi to the solar logos. That triangle is found here as well. But the nice thing about triangles is they usually particularly give evidence of the first three rays, the rays of aspect. Now, you maybe have other triangles with other rays and so forth, but the 1, 2, and 3 of things is what we really look for. So there's a lot about initiation here, and he says, compare your planes with initiation. And so I'll just do that. Down here, we have the first initiation, somewhat of the mastery of the etheric physical vehicle. On the astral plane, ruled by Mars, we conquer Mars through the power of Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune, and we take the second initiation. Now, for the majority of DK students, the second initiation was the objective. On the mental plane, activating the fifth ray and the sign Capricorn, we take the third initiation. On the Buddhic plane, released now out of the dense physical body of the planetary logos, we take the fourth initiation. DK is not really training people except maybe in the depths of the ashram to take that initiation. He wasn't even at first training people to take the third, just the first and second, but later he included the third initiation. When we can contact Shambhala somewhat, and let's remember that Libra is the royal road to Shambhala, from the base to the crown center, we can take the fifth initiation. And interesting that Saturn is the hierarchical ruler of Libra. There are other, I can look at almost any sign of the zodiac and give you an idea, perhaps, of how it contributes to any initiation whatsoever. But there are certain signs and certain planets which really predominate in a particular initiation. So Libra here is the ruler of the spiritual will, the atmic plane, and in just a minute we're going to see how the third ray contributes to the fifth initiation. And then when we get to the monadic plane, extremely expansive initiation, we become more than a master and no longer just a human being, and Jupiter gives us that tremendous expansion needed to include so much in that sixth initiation. And finally, where the Christ is now, where the Buddha is now, as it were, the Christ sitting at the right hand of the Father, that's the symbolic way of locating his position in Shambhala. We have the seventh degree being taken, with other signs of the zodiac thrown in as well. As a matter of fact, if you want to check this out, and maybe I've told you this before, go to the Rays and Initiations, page 340, and just see what kind of rays are involved in taking each initiation. You know, to take the seventh, the first initiation, a lot of seventh ray is needed to get things in order. To take the baptism, devotion is needed, and what lies ahead for so many of us to take the transfiguration, spiritual science is needed, and on it goes until we take some very high initiations. See, they kind of reverse. They kind of, initiation 5 is ruled by the first ray. Well, up to that point, it's in order. 7, 6, 5, 4. And DK says, yeah, 3 is involved too, and I'll show you that. But ray 1 is the major ray of aspect for the fifth initiation. Ray 3, making your decision about where you're going to go when you leave the solar system, that's the sixth initiation. And finally, this glorious ray 2 is what remains when we take the seventh initiation of resurrection at the very top of the chart, which involves the logoic plane, and that's what Christ and the Buddha are taking. And then if you go beyond that, you know, you're kind of going on to the cosmic astral plane, and basically a number of rays together give you what you need, and the final initiation that you can take in relation to the cosmic physical plane, the 3 major rays are involved. So this is a wonderful chart to study, and it gives you a very, very big scope. Okay. So anyway, there's the 7 planes of divine expression, the 7 states of resultant consciousness, which really are initiatory states. There's the 7 crises, and we could kind of begin to assign them to some of the planes. You know, in the beginning, Cancer is very physical. The moon is very physical. It rules the dense physical body. So when you individualize, millions of years ago, you're a very physical being, and then a long time passes, and the astral plane comes into play, and that's ruled by Aries and Libra, and you turn towards higher things. And then those higher things lead you eventually to initiation. All 5 initiations are ruled by Capricorn, the first 5, in addition to other signs of the zodiac. So things really begin to expand for you through the initiatory process. And then comes the love problem, you know, the love of your fellow human beings and of your planet leads you to sacrifice yourself. And you come very much under the influence of the Christ in Gemini. He's the head of the cosmic Christ. Now we go backwards a little bit. Scorpio is part of the big battle at the second initiation in the swamp of Lerna. Okay? And that's where we have to learn how to kill off the 9 heads of the Hydra through the power of the intuition. Now, you know, it doesn't do cut off this head, that head, to grow in its place. It's a symbolic way of saying, you know, you can't fight the problem on its own level. You have to lift up to a much higher perspective, and that's why we meditate, and that's why we seek illumination, so we can understand why it is that these initiations lead to these higher possibilities, but you've got to solve the problem from a point above where the problem exists. And we might go right back to the birthplace for the first initiation. Virgo is the great mother and is involved in that initiation, and so are many different signs of the zodiac, like Leo and like Gemini, and you can get a number of them. Capricorn, Christmas, a number of the signs of the zodiac giving the birth of the Christ in the heart, and finally a much higher Leo, where you are liberated. It's almost like the last three planes give you what you need there. Leo becomes the top. Leo becomes the seventh initiation. Leo becomes the fifth initiation. I don't know about the sixth. You head off on a path that you have chosen, and you are a monad on that path, who knows for how long. So look, DK gives us this stuff, and he says, relate it, correlate all this. Every area, let's see what I can find here. Every area of these, I think I'm going to have to make that smaller. Yeah. I think, yeah, this is the, I prefer to use Tuyas because they're somehow more accurate. Every area of these 7 has its own tasks, its own stages of consciousness, its own subdivisions of the process. And if you can know where you're working and with what particular chakras you are working now as you attempt to rise in your consciousness and rise in your powers and your scope of realization, you will have done a lot. Now, in some of the classes I've taught, I say, okay, these are the chakric triangles. Where, realistically, do you think you are working? And, people have to really think about that. And they come up with something, something. And let's just say a lot of what they come up with is either this or this. They're not just man-controlled from the astral plane. No, they wouldn't even be in class. They're not just man-controlled from the mental plane. No, they wouldn't be searching for the soul, because it wouldn't be a reality to them, even a possibility. But as man partially controlled by the ego or advanced man, with some of the head centers waking up, and as spiritual man from the first initiation to the third initiation, that's where they're going to find themselves. And when you look at yourself and what are the chakras you are working with, and what are the triangles here, and where do the energies from those triangles come from, from your astrology and so forth, then you'll have an idea, a more accurate idea of what you're really doing to advance along the spiritual path using the science of triangles. And then one day, when we're a third degree initiate, we'll work with the heart, the 7 head centers, and the 2 many-petaled lotuses, presumably the crown chakra and probably the Ajna chakra, probably. Or if not that, then the one that's at the Alta Major center, which in some books has 96 petals, just the way the Ajna Center has when you count the two 48s together. All right, so I know this is triangles occur along the way. And basically what I'm going to do, because I've talked long enough here, and I'm going for knowledge in depth, what we've been doing is looking at the 7 planes, the kinds of consciousness you achieve on each plane, including where you're working. Now, nobody here is working persistently on the Buddhic plane. If you're a 4th degree initiate and a master, okay, but we're not. So we're working on the mental plane, and maybe some of us a little reception from the higher mind and maybe a little from the Buddhic plane and so forth, but not working there. And we're passing through crises. And these crises, long ago we passed individualization. Long ago we did the first reversal of the wheel and decided that something higher in us, the higher of the pairs of opposites, was worthwhile, and we started to go for that. And maybe we've started the initiation process around initiation number 1 and are making our way through. And maybe some people are passing through the 2nd degree and have one of those horrible lives filled with conflict. Well, the 2nd degree is said to be even harder for people on rays 2, 4, 6, and 1 to take, even harder than the 4th degree. Probably the majority of us has passed through the birth of the Christ in the heart, or is passing through that. And then the 7 initiations, which I have looked at on page 340 of the rays and the initiations. In a way, you have to be able to go from book to book to book, because the piece of information that you need may not always be exactly in the book you're reading. You got to know where to go. And then, like DK says, and then you can fill it all in, and it'll be like a jigsaw puzzle, and it'll all come together, and we will know the ageless wisdom one day like he does, with meticulous entirety. So what I'm going to do here, even though I talked a little bit about it, is I'm going to say that this is the end of number 58, and this is the 6th of November, and we'll be beginning number 59 next time, and it will be the 13th of November. And in terms of pagination, we're not making a whole lot of progress, because I'm pulling in references from all over the place, including the things that I am, kind of making up as I go along. So I guess we're still on page 476. But the idea is, if you can begin to get a bigger picture of what you are passing through, and to realize that there's a science behind the whole thing, and that if you are careful and you follow the instructions of the master, that you will succeed, then your whole path of evolution will be undertaken in a manner less chaotic and more filled with real knowledge of what you are doing. And all the way along, you'll be dealing with certain triangles which have to be vivified. You know, like, let's just say, here's the center, here's the center, and in the back of my neck is the center. Until those three chakras are spinning and revolving the energy, then I cannot work up what is called in esoteric healing the dispelling radiance. It's almost a sign of, let's say, taking the third degree to have those three chakras really connected and working, and at the same time you develop certain esoteric healing capabilities. Triangles are really important. They give you different gifts. Your powers are increased because of those triangles. So let's all try to get out of the way of the development of the triangles and do the right thing, so that in a more rapid and certain manner we can achieve what will really make us useful in this very difficult situation that humanity is in at the present moment. All right. So, like I always ask you, I hope you take some notes, and if you want to discuss something, ask something. First about these different planes, different crises, different initiations, different stages of consciousness. That's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about planes, stages, crises, and different states of consciousness, as well as initiations. Initiations. This is what we're talking about. Now, if you have questions or thoughts about those, great. We'll try to address them. And if you need to discuss something else in the Ageless Wisdom, well, then we'll work on those something else things, because everything is related to everything else. Okay, so now I'm looking for anybody that wants to say something, write something.
Michael?
Yes, BL, is that you?
Yes, you have two questions, one from Michael, and then, well, three now.
Okay, good.
One. So go to your question box.
I'm going to the pane, to the question pane. And of course, we've solved the problem of my pantomime. So I'm back with you. And Michael, I think it's Moultrie. I think that's it, Michael. I hope. Anyway, in the fifth chain, you say, Mercury diagram, the triangle looks like more like a yod, 150 degrees. Yes, it could be that. And you know what's very interesting about see, I have to read this because I know that it's not visible to you. A yod is formed of going 6 houses forward and 6 houses backward. So, for instance, if I have, let's see if I can just find like anything here. I'll show you what I mean. If I'm going to have a yod, this is just the moment. I would count 6 houses in this direction and 6 houses in this direction. Now, the Mercury is involved because archetypally, Virgo is the ruler of this 6th house, and Mercury is the ultimate ruler of the 8th house. And so we can get our 150-degree angles from considering 6th and 8th house meanings, which usually have to do with health and adjustment. Now, we're not we're not having a yod in this particular chart. This is how it is right now here in Finland at this very moment, Leo rising and all the rest. So, but the yod, I think, is well noticed. And I'm going to go over here, and here it is. It kind of looks like the very narrow triangle, the kind of thing you're liable to find with the yod, as well as a superimposed equilateral triangle. And Mercury is really the center of the whole thing, which kind of confirms your idea about the yod. So let's see what else you have to say here. Looks like a yod with a 60-degree base within a grand trine. Well, okay, if you want to say within, that grand trine is kind of small, but let's just say the two figures, the equilateral grand trine and more the yod, are participating in a dual figure. So this might suggest a harmony through conflict, fourth ray connection. Okay, and we can speculate, right? Yods can be about choices leading to identity. They're always about refinement of some kind, you know, where you have to notice a flaw and be rid of it or undertake some kind of healing process. Yods can be about choices leading to identity. Grand trines can be about gifts coming easily that need to be utilized. There's all kinds of ideas about grand trines. There's an Australian, Bernadette Brady, is that her name? Something like that. She's written extensively in Australia about astrology, and one of her books is it's called The Eagle and something else. It's all about the intuition and the mind. And she basically says when you have a grand trine, things develop rapidly. Now, what the Tibetan says about the grand trine is that they should be outlined in blue in the special charts that the masters make, and that they indicate spirit and the activity of spirit, whereas the stars should be written in yellow and indicate consciousness, and the squares should be written in black and indicate circumstance and the limitation of circumstance. But no question about it, when you look at the usual astrological chart and the trine aspect or the grand trine aspect, we tend to find that we don't have to struggle so much to be gifted with the particular quality that is coming from the planets or signs involved there. So coming easily and need to be utilized, perhaps best through the challenge of a yod. Okay, I see what you mean, and does this make sense? I think it does. You know, it's a speculation, and it has to be tested. But there's no question that the bigger triangle is the one that seems to have Mercury at its center. Now, every one of 7 planetary globes will be listed. Now, you know, in the Earth we have, in the Earth scheme and in the Earth chain, we have Venus. We have Venus and an Earth globe and a Mars globe, and we have a Jupiter and a Neptune globe. Sometimes DK has said, don't pay any attention to the names of the globes because they come from an older system, etc., and they may be misleading. On the other hand, I have noticed that they can be quite revelatory concerning the sequence undertaken within a particular chain from globe to globe to globe. Now, the Mercury chain is active in its own way, but is not yet the focal point of the planetary logos. Right here on our Earth chain, that's the focal point at the present time, and maybe when the planetary logos undertakes his fifth subsidiary initiation, maybe there will be something special going on here in the Mercury chain involving these different configurations. So I think it's a good catch there to see a Yod as a possibility. And I try to show at first that Mercury is involved with Yods, both through the 8th house going backwards and the 6th house going forwards. The only thing we're missing is Aries, and there's no travel at all there. And then you would have Mercury in all three rulership positions. You'd also have to include Gemini. So there's a certain geometry here which will help us explain these things. Now you've come up with a speculation. Now basically you have to search it out in terms of people and the kinds of things that are found in human charts, and maybe some planetary research, although it's very hard to get much that is said definitively about the fifth chain. You know, or even there's quite a bit that's said about the second chain, the Venus chain, which has a line of descent for the lords of the flame and the Lord of the world. But the concentration is on these two, number 2 and number 4. And we've not yet journeyed to, and how many millions of years, even billions, will it take before we are able to experience this and then this, and finally articulate the Jupiter and the Neptune chain, which are just left as sort of blank representations of the globe structure without showing us anything about the geometry that probably is very important. So I think it's a good catch to think of the Yod, and I think it has its meaning in this context. And now, Anne Veronica, do the initiations work in exact numerical order? Well, you know, there's some overlap. While you're working on one intensively, some preparation for a future and some rounding off of the past can be occurring. I'll try to demonstrate that in a minute. Could it be in the smaller initiations for one to pass the second initiation and later on the first? I don't think so. I think that there are certain requirements that have to be established as a foundation and then assimilated before it's possible really to move on to the next initiation. I believe there is a gradualism there that cannot be evaded. Now, like I say, there's some schools of thought that say you can take 5 initiations at once. My impression about that is that it's not hierarchical knowledge, and it's written by either an anxious teacher who's in a hurry or furthered by anxious students who are in a hurry, because everything that DK said you have to do between initiations just doesn't get done, and you would have to be, in order to approach this initiation, if you give credit to what DK says. He says, the initiate is an initiate before being initiated. So what you'd have to do is, before you took this great initiation, you would already have to be a master. You see what I'm saying? You would have had to achieved the 5th degree before you even enter into this synthetic 5 at once initiation, because at the end of it, you're a master. So you are confirmed in the mastership you've already achieved. And, to me, that doesn't make sense. So I ascribe to the gradualistic method. Now, there may be a few little things after one takes an initiation that one leaves not quite perfect. And let's just say we're always maybe going back and saying, well, I could perfect that, or in that sense, you may be already the initiate, but there's a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of perfecting that you can do. Now, because the second initiation generally is separated by so much time from the first initiation, there are loads of developments which have to take place before you can take that second initiation, and they would have already included what you have to do for the first. So that's my answer to you from the best that I can understand. Yeah, now I wanted to show you what I meant. Come on now. Let's say you're taking the first initiation. I want to demonstrate the 3-in-1 method. I want to demonstrate overlap. By the time you finish with the first initiation, you may have entered petal 5 as something of an egotistical type. But by the time you're finished with it, the 5th petal is completely unfolded. Now that he gives us that in Cosmic Fire, and I have, the references there. But you are working upon the selflessness which prepares you to unfold the 6th petal. Here it is, the 6th petal, the unfolding of which completely gives you the second initiation. And it's well known that among the sacrifice petals of the mental plane, which are necessary for initiation, petal number 7 is associated with the first initiation. So, a lot of work is being done to finish 5. Additional work is being attempted, leading to greater selflessness and some degree of unfoldment of the sacrificial 7th petal is undergone during the first initiation process. This is all an overlap, okay? Now, if you want to take the second initiation, which is really important one for many things that you might be able to do, like a master or a high initiate cannot use your mechanism the way Jesus, I say, used the mechanism of Apollonius of Tyana, unless the 6th petal is completely unfolded and the second initiation taken. So, a lot of work at the second degree on the 6th petal, with further sacrifice of the kind indicated at the 7th petal, and initial work done in the 8th petal, which is the Scorpio petal and very rough to deal with. And it's a sacrifice petal involving love. And it's not by any means fully unfolded at the second initiation, but it is being worked on. Again, 3 petals worked on simultaneously to achieve one initiation. But they're in order, you see, and they have diminishing degrees of work, starting with lots of work at petal 6 and becoming less and less as you go on. Now, when you're going to take initiation number 3, all 3 of the sacrifice petals have to be completely unfolded before that initiation is possible. So you complete 7, you complete 8, and in a very strong effort, you complete petal number 9 as well, leading to the synthesis petals, which have been unfolding gradually with each initiation. So that's the sense of overlap that I get, but not the sense that they would be out of order. Now, occasionally, DK says you do get something strange that happens. A person may be working on the outer tier and still in the Hall of Ignorance, but one petal somewhere up here in the next tier gets unfolded a bit out of order. In other words, it's somehow the person has certain qualities which are really in advance of the level that that person is holding. And that's a peculiar method of development. Occasionally that happens, but it's not the general rule, and it doesn't mean that the initiations are out of order, because the initiations require balance, and we're not going to be allowed before the initiator, before our particular master looks at our condition and says, yeah, it's stable enough for the accolade of fire. So I hope that helps a little bit on that question. Now, okay, well, you know, Chris says, can we speak a little more about getting out of the way? Our habit nature, our Maya, our moon, our rotary motion. We just kind of continue to do what we've been doing. And like Einstein said, basically, he says, you know, the height of insanity is to continue doing what you're doing and expecting different results than the ones you're getting. So we have to understand what behaviors stop our progress. And like Master Moria said, the smallest grain of sand can stop the largest wheel. And DK said, what's holding you back from initiation? It can be a tiny little thing, but you are finding it to be a difficult thing. So our habit nature, if we indulge it, I mean, look, suppose a person is drinking too much, you know, is an alcoholic or on the verge of being an alcoholic. That's not going to mix with advancement along the path. Rule 6 will tell us that there's no future in being in one's own way in that particular manner. I'll show it to you, and probably maybe you've seen it. But here's a picture of the raised initiations, and I don't know, let's just go to page, I don't know, 18 something. Let's see about this. Maybe it's more in the 20s. Here it is. Rule 6. Oh, aha. Now I'm seeing what it is. It's here. The purificatory fires burn dim and low when the third kingdom is sacrificed to the fourth. This is a kind of a call for vegetarianism. Therefore, let the disciple refrain from taking life and let him nourish that which is lowest with the produce of the second. That's a general rule that's kind of contradicted as you go on later. But in initiation, human and solar, he says more. Rule 6. Oh, let's see if I can do that rule. Get rid of that 27. 6. There we go. Okay, here it is. And basically he says, at first it's a drastic rule, but vegetarianism is required. He doesn't say that later in the process. The lower nature becomes clogged and heavy. The man's in his own way, okay? The inner blaze cannot shine forth when meat is included in the diet. This is a drastic rule for applicants, okay, not necessarily for group initiates, and may not be violated. Okay, applicants to initiation, that's what he means. Aspirants can choose to eat meat or not, as they prefer, but at a certain stage upon the path, it is essential that all meat eating of every kind be stopped and strict attention be paid to diet. A disciple must confine himself to vegetables, grains, fruits, and nuts. Only thus can he build the type of physical body which can stand the entrance of the real man who has stood in his subtler body before the initiator. So basically, you're taking your initiation in the causal body. That's a real head scratcher there. I'm not going to be able to do that, but it doesn't make any difference. Okay, so should he not do that, and should it be possible for him to take initiation, having thus prepared himself, the physical body would be shattered by the energy pouring through the newly stimulated centers, and dire danger to the brain, the spine, or the heart would eventuate. So, and here he goes, he tells us what we can't have. We can't have meat, fish, liquors, fermented liquors of all kinds, as well as the use of tobacco, all that absolutely forbidden. And then he says, well, eggs and cheese, you can have that, but it's better if you don't overdo it. And so here it all is. And this is the ideal, but we know that the ideal is seldom attainable in the present transitional period. So he's giving us a little bit of room, okay? But the thing is that we would be standing in our own way. We would not be getting out of our own way if we persisted in habits that we knew, according to the instructions of the teacher, that we're not going to lead anywhere. And that's what I meant by that. That's what I meant by that. Okay. Okay, stop that. Stop that horrible thing. Oh, golly. All right, now. So, Chris, that's what I meant. Now, Ishtar. So, yeah, well, we do what we can here. You say you're thanking me for these detailed explanations. I guess, my line is meticulous entirety on the third subray of the second, so I can't help it, even if it becomes at times ridiculous entirety. And anyway, how does one natal chart influence these astrological initiations? And does one's astrological progression affect these energies if they do? And the answer is yes. Um, there are people who are ready to take a certain initiation, but because the astrological circumstances involving the heavens at the time and the progress in their chart are not right for them to take that initiation, and they may have to wait until another life. Now, there's all kinds of ways to take an initiation. I'm never going to be one that says, only if you have the sun in Leo, with Leo rising, maybe can you take the first initiation. No, because Gemini, Virgo, Capricorn, those signs of the zodiac can all enter in. And I'm not going to say only if you're a Scorpio can you take the second initiation. Scorpio's involved in the first initiation too, because, Aquarius is there to cleanse the body, and Libra, the astral body, and Libra is there to balance it, and Pisces is there to sensitize it. There's all kinds of ways in to these initiations, but the chart and what it's doing, and the heavens and how they are showing availability of certain energies, those things are important. And, look, here's the biggest example that I can think of. The Buddha was a moon chain being. He may have even been a previous solar system being, because we're told that that the seeds of the first major solar system ripened in him. So that seems to be a big hint. So maybe he was part of the previous major solar system, and he was a moon chain being. Now, he was ready for the third initiation while on the moon chain. But at that time, on the moon chain, it just wasn't being offered because of the non-availability of certain energies and because of the conditions on the moon chain, and he had to wait a long time, certainly millions of years, because you have to have, between chains, it takes a long time, because every appearance of a chain requires a twilight period, or a period when the chain doesn't exist, or there's no emphasis on it before moving on to the next chain. So I'll just say, since I don't know, a long time before the Atlantean root race in the fourth chain, when with the Christ, who was earth chain humanity, the two of them passed before the one initiator, or maybe the whoever was the initiator at that time, maybe it was probably Sanat Kumara, and took together the third initiation in a fourth ray ashram. Their soul ray at the time was the fourth ray. Since then it has changed to the second ray, as it sometimes does. That's a long wait, and it all depends on ray and astrological influences and their ability to be available, their availability. So while there are many ways in to the initiatory process, it's not always possible when you reach the point of readiness for the initiation to be taken. You may have to wait until things are right in the sky for that to happen. And that's interesting, and that would be up to the masters themselves, the ones who are supervising your progress. I remember DK talked about a discussion he had with Master Kutumi, and they were discussing the initiate disciple, Roberto Assagioli. And probably, in my mind, they were discussing whether he could take the fourth initiation in that life. And he had a very, very hard life because of fascism in Italy. And as I understand it, he and his son were hiding out in caves to avoid the Gestapo or whatever they called it there in Italy. And his son died at some point in all of that. It was a very, very rough thing. And Master DK and Master KH, who was really the one in charge, decided, well, it's he's already suffered enough, and he's super, super sensitive. And any widening of the channel, such as might lead to the next initiation, might be just too much at this time. So they made a decision. But there's no question that he is being prepared for the fourth initiation, and probably in his next incarnation, given the correct astrological availability, will take it. So some of these things are a little bit flexible, and they depend upon availability of energies and also decisions made by our teachers. Okay, I hope that, is a little useful. Meanwhile, you can get the most out of what's happening in your chart. And as I say, there are many ways in. Not only just one sign of the zodiac or one planetary position can give you the possibility of opening the door to a particular initiation. And in my book, video book, which is called simply The Egoic Lotus, and, has a lot of programs in it, I go into these possibilities. So if you have time, you might want to see what is being said there. It might be useful to you. Okay. Now, so I've answered those questions, and I think it's time to call it a day. Unless, there's something absolutely pressingly drastic at the moment. Otherwise, we will just think about how all of these energies are related, learn about their relationships, and learn how important the triangular structure is in the great science of relations. Somewhere in the astrology book, it gives you some of these sciences that you have to learn, and maybe I can just really quickly. Whoa, I see what's going on here. Excuse me. I'm in two books at the same time. I don't want to be. And here we go. Science of Relations. And right here, well, it should be, goodness, shouldn't be Initiation Human to Soul. It should be Esoteric Astrology, or maybe it's Relationships. I'm not sure. Science of Relations. Well, I'm not finding it, but it's in the front part of the book. And here it says something wonderful, that science deals with life, quality, and appearance in the three worlds of divine purpose and will. And for that reason, all I can do in this treatise is to convey to you certain seed thoughts which, at some future date, will blossom forth as the great science of relations. So this is what he's trying to do for us, and one of the very first things he's going to do with his new instruction around the year 2025, and maybe in that year, is deal further with esoteric astrology. Okay, so let us close.
You have a hand up, Michael.
Which hand is up? Oh, there's a hand from Sharon, and there is a. Can you get a recording of the webinar? And BL, you can answer that. I think so.
Oh, yeah, she typed it in. Yes, the recordings will be made available in either this afternoon or tomorrow. I make a recording. Michael, of course, makes a recording. His is much better than mine. So when I get his, I post that. Everything is on Makara, www.makara.us. And these webinars are under the ASK portion that's listed in the main menu.
All right, that kind of answers it. And there's the address, www.makara.us. So yes, Sharon, that is possible. And as soon as I convert it, see, our platform here called GoToMeeting puts in a lot of extra stuff that makes it difficult or impossible to play the program unless you have bought GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar. So we strip that out, and then it can be played on any computer. And so right after the program is over here, I convert, I send it to BL, and she decides which looks best and posts it for your re-examination or just initial examination, whatever. That's coming along. Anything else, BL? Are we okay? I think.
Yeah, I see another hand now.
Okay.
Anna has her hand up.
Okay. Here we go, Anna. Now you can speak. Go ahead. Yes.
Hello. I just wanted to add that this triangular relationship about you just was quoting, vertically horizontal, is created by the soul, the pituitary gland, ajna center, and creates the reflex action of pineal gland, which is the light evocative gland. And this triangle is sort of a similar or smaller individual triangle what hierarchy is doing through the ashrams, creates in humanity, another triangle, creating unified groups of light and similar triangular relationships. So on a small individual and in all humanity, through the triangles, we create beacons of light and perception of divine ideas and the activation of etheric and brain in these higher dimensions.
Yes.
That's all.
One of the things, thank you, Anna. One of the things it's a lot in esoteric healing, you know, and the chakras have their points of application within the more physical structure of the form. So I mentioned the ajna, the crown, and the alto major center, but from a more practical and applied perspective, that exteriorizes itself as the pituitary, pineal, and carotid glands. And that's the way it really gets into the brain and into the dense form. And you can carry that on too in the greater beings because they have their chakra structure, and then DK hints at their glandular structure as well. Now, of course, where does the configuration of triangles really begin? Let's just say you'd have to, kind of go to the capstone of the universe, any universe. The very top of that universe will demand the triangular structure. The perceiver, the perceived, and the perceiving taking place at very, very high levels, way beyond anything that we can fathom. And then, of course, it works its way down and down and down until we come into a solar system like our own, and planets like our own, and various beings like our own. And so it is ever-present structure, beginning at the highest reaches of any universe and working its way down into even the atomic level and the subatomic level. We're going to find it like everywhere. And learning how to work intelligently with it, what we're really working on. See, in other words, given our rays, given our signs of the zodiac, given our horoscope, what really is our next step ahead? Not just some fantasy, some wishful thinking, whatever. What really is our next step ahead? And in what triangle are we really working? Because there's all kinds of them. You can see that when you get into this thing, triangles, all the way up, triangles in the soul, triangles in the triad, triangles in the monad, and 3 major monadic centers, 7 here and 3 here, and that's a big triangle too. All the way up the cosmic physical plane, we're working in and within different triangles. So what's really happening, that's what we have to know without exaggerating or minimizing accuracy. The 5th ray, that's what we have to know. So anyway, thank you, Anna, for your thought there. Thank you. And let's see. Well, I think that's it now. Anyway, it should be it because it's been 2 hours, and my wife says to me, why can't you stop these things at an hour and a half? And she's actually right. But some of us just have that disease called on and on, Maybe we have to have Gemini in our chart to do that, and I do have that Gemini and go on and on. So anyway, I hope you bear with me, and I hope that when you study this kind of thing, something of value comes to you. So now let's close by this most important mantram of light and power given to the race when Christ said, yes, I will put in a physical reappearance during the Aquarian age. Apparently a very, very great sacrifice. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. may Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you. Tomorrow morning, reappearance of the Christ, 6 a.m. GMT, and then excuse me, Friday we will have Glamour webinar, and we will also have at night at the 8 o'clock GMT time, we will have the Cosmic Fire Roundup, as we're making our way through Cosmic Fire. Well, we're doing that anyway, no way to evolve without making your way through Cosmic Fire in terms of the real fires. So you're all invited. And look, if you don't have the links, of course, you can write me, infinitize8@gmail.com, and I think you probably have a BL's and Joe's addresses. They might be able to give that to you. But what I generally do is I go to our normal link on YouTube, and on YouTube I put it right under the picture, the coming webinar links. So if you go there, you can get it there too. And is that you, BL?
That is me. If they go to Makara and they click on the page, they have to go to the MDR commentaries on the top line menu, and then scroll down to either the Cosmic Fire, the new fellowship, or to the one at the bottom, the new Seeds of the Infinite and Identify as Being. If you go to those two pages, it has the link to register. It also has the upcoming events. Okay, so everything's there on that Makara.us. It has the recordings of the previous events, the link to register if they're not already so, and it has the dates and times of the upcoming events for both of those series.
So that's even easier, and one way or another you can get it if you want to participate. Tomorrow, all we have is the reappearance of the Christ in the morning, and then on Friday we have 2 webinars, no broadcasts, and then the usual on Saturday, Soul of Nations, and on Sunday, attracting money for financial purposes. So the whole team wants to thank you for being here and for thinking along with us, Tuya, BL, and Joe, and Michael, and whoever here is involved in bringing these things to you. And we just hope you think deeply and, meditate till all this stuff becomes a real part of your consciousness. Okay? Lots of love, and we'll be seeing you before long. Now, bye-bye.